Hi and welcome back. In this video, I want to explain the options on the Settings tab in the Appearance page, and I will put time codes in the descriptions area of the video so you can jump to the things that you are interested in. But if you are really interested in learning waveform, you might want to just watch this. It won't take that long, and I'm going to walk through what these various settings do. So first I click on the Settings tab, Appearance page, and the very first section here is language. And by default, we're in the English language. And if you click it, you'll see that you can only choose English because that's all I have chosen. But you can get additional languages by clicking this right here. So it goes out and then loads the list of other languages. Once you've chosen one of these, you'll be able to choose a different language and switch into that language. Now, those translations are never going to be quite as complete as English, but I'm going to also show you how you can help improve that. So there's check for language updates, because the languages are actually translated through a wiki, and we're going to take a look at that in a second. So you can have Waveform check for language updates never at startup, or just declare that it should change it right now. Typically, you're going to want to have this do this at startup. Now, if you're operating in another language other than English, then if you go to the language wiki, which looks like this, you'll see the available languages here. And we've got Arabic, Chinese, English, French, German, Irish, Japanese, Latin, Italian, Portuguese, Spanish, Turkish, Russian, Slovenia. Let's just choose some Japanese. You'll see for each of the tags within the program, you've got a translation. So for clips, browser, look and feel, if you could search through here, you'll find all those. So you can actually click edit here and go into the file and edit the wiki. And it does say here, I don't have permission to edit this page. For the following, you must confirm your email address before editing pages. So please set and validate your email address. So there's a way to go in here and get permission to be an editor for this wiki. If you're operating in another language, you want to improve the translation, go ahead and do that. So then look and feel is the basic color scheme. I've gotten this question a few times. It's like, what is the color scheme that you use for all the videos? I would say most of the time I use grayscale medium. So that gives you this kind of warmer, a little bit lighter look. I think it looks better in videos. I also like it when I'm just generally using it to warmer, a little easier on the eyes. The default, you'll see, is a little bit more bluish. It's got this deeper color. It also looks very good. Of the ones that are available here, grayscale medium is my favorite, but you can choose that and it immediately changes the look. So just to get an idea of the difference, if we go to default and then go to, say, this, you can see that we've got a really dark and deep background. So the clip colors are very vivid in waveform, and so there's a lot of contrast. So if I go back here and change this to my favorite, the grayscale medium, you can see it's a little bit less contrast. We've got still a nice dark background. I just like the warm colors and the look of this. Now there's the option to scale the display, and you can go up and down in increments here. So I'm going to go down. This actually makes the text smaller, and that would be appropriate if you were running this on a very, very large screen, like you've got a TV set or something like that. If you have a very large screen TV, then the text will get bigger. Now I'm going to change it back because honestly I can barely see it on my screen right here to the normal setting. You also have the option, say you're operating on a high resolution but small screen, you might want to bump it up like this to make the text bigger. You also have the option to change the font. I leave it at the default. Again, because I'm doing videos, I don't want it to look, strange in some way. But you could choose something other than the default and tailor it and make it look, interesting for, the way you like to work. So all of the fonts from your system will appear on this list. If you want to try something strange, like changing it to Impact, that's not a good choice. Plain Helvetica. Looks odd. It's, I know people spend a lot of time playing around with all of these different fonts. Maybe Open Sans. That looks okay. For the most part, I leave this at the default. Now there is a low detail interface. Some people like the look of this. Typically you use it if you have, lagging or performance issues, or it just somehow doesn't look clear to you. Most modern computers, you can leave this turned off. I leave it turned off. However, if you just take a look here at kind of the shading depth to some of the controls on here, and if we go to the low detail interface, then you get a flatter look. Particularly you notice on the plugins in the mixer. If we open the other mixer, it's a little more obvious there as well. So you could play around with that, try it both ways, and I will leave that turned off. Now in the browser section, you can position the browser left, right, or at the top, and you can just choose it right here. So if you want to see what it looks like to put your browser on the top, then you can do that. When I open the browser with the shortcut B, you can see it opens there on the top. Once it's on the top, you can add additional panels to it by clicking the little plus. And this is really kind of useful if you're dragging in a lot of loops and waveforms into your project. I don't normally use it this way, but it's an option. If you change that back to using it on the left, there it is with all of these side by side. I'll just click X to close those. And this is really nice because you can have the Actions panel open here, Files, or maybe Search open in another panel. You can also have that on the right, as you saw in that menu. If you've used this for a while, you know that you can go to the I User Interface Navigator up here in the right corner. And where you see the browser here, you can just drag it to the position you want it. So once you're in your edit, you can drag that around, put it on the top, put it on the side, or leave it here on the left. Now back in the browser, this says panels open side by side. If I turn that off, you'll see that as you add additional browser panels, they'll stack. So right here, you can see they're stacked up. If we add another one and another one, you've got all the same options. It's just that they're one over the other. Honestly, I prefer to have them side by side, and so for my preferred setup, I like to have them side by side. The next option is automatically hide and show panels. I leave this off because when you get your mouse pointer near the edge of the screen, the browser will open up. I just don't really like that. So I'm going to show you how it works, however, because you might. So I'm going to close the browser by hitting the keyboard shortcut B. Now when I get near the edge of the screen, you'll see that it pops open. And it will do the same thing if you have the browser on the left or on the right. So I'm going to turn off automatically hide and show panels because I wind up opening it inadvertently, and I don't really like that. Now into the clips appearance options, we've got show waveforms. Now some people don't actually like to work and see the waveforms drawn, the thumbnails drawn on clips. I'm so used to it I can't really imagine working that way, but I'm going to show you what it's like with that turned off. We'll just create a new project. I'll click plus here, new project, and I'll just choose the band recording. All right, so there's a lot of waveforms on here. You can see waveform thumbnails, typical of almost any digital audio workstation. This is what you see. Now if we go back to settings, turn off show waveforms, then you'll see they're just blank. I mean, if you just listen to them or you're used to working with tape, you don't honestly need to see those, and it might be a change of perspective if you want to try that sometime. The more important thing is to understand that this is an option if you sometime come in and find that, hey, where are all my waveforms? It's probably that this setting has been flipped. So I'm going to turn the show waveforms back on. There's also an option to show high resolution waveforms. On recent versions of Waveform, you've got really nice detail on these waveforms. This would save probably a little bit of CPU in calculating the waveforms by not having high-res waveforms. And you'll see they're a little more rough. They look a little more rough. And if you've got anywhere near a fairly modern computer, you should have no problem running with this setting, show high-res waveforms turned on. It just looks a lot smoother. But if you want to eke out the very last bit of CPU performance and graphics performance at the expense of the appearance of it, you can turn that off. Show clip names is pretty evident. I'll just show you the clip names appear, like here it says bass on all of these clips. Every clip has a clip name in the lower left corner. And they're somewhat helpful. They're not always really that useful, and if you just prefer a cleaner look and don't really care about the actual name of the underlying clip, you can turn off show clip names, and you'll see that now there's no clip names. I don't pay that much attention to them. A lot of the time they can be helpful. You can rename clips easily enough. So I'm going to turn it back on and just show you how to rename the clips. Show clip names. Here's the clip name. We'll open the browser, and on the actions panel, this is the clip name right here. So where it says guitar lead, I'll type guitar lead new. And you can see that this clip is now guitar new. Just a nice way to organize your project. If you want to see those, you can use them. If not, you can turn that feature off. All right, next is show extra slip handles on clip headers. This is a new feature or a new option starting with Waveform 11.5. Allows you to simplify the clip headers. So back here you'll notice on a typical audio clip we've got left and right resizing handles, and you've got this slip handle here in the middle. Well, there's extra variations on slip that you can enable with this setting if you want. So if we turn that on, then we've got this one here. This allows slipping where it actually kind of drags, and you'll see it's pushing the waveform off the other end. Nothing wrong with that. It's a great feature. You could do the same thing from the other side with that handle. So you can resize this way or this way. And then you've got this extra framing box like this where you can move the frame around. So if you want extra options for detailed editing or any of these things match your workflow, these were traditional Tracktion features, then you can turn this on right here. I typically leave this turned off. If I'm doing a workflow that benefits from those, then I'll come and turn those back on. Now, show MIDI CC lines. Most of the time you can leave this on, but if we go into a project, this one has MIDI CC data. You can see, especially if I zoom in, this is MIDI CC or continuous controller data. These are the lines that we're talking about. Now this setting only controls whether you can see it here on this reduced view. If you're in the actual MIDI editor, then you can deal with actually editing this controller data separately. Typically you can leave that turned off. If you turn it off, you'll see that that data just doesn't show up on the clips. Now, reduce waveform height on selected clips. This is a visual cue that a clip is selected. So I'll go back to this project here so you can see the difference. Now you could see that the whole waveform jumps up just a little bit because it's being shrunk down when it's selected to give you a visual animation that it's selected. So watch what happens. See, it gets very slightly smaller as the header. See, the header is not here when it's not selected. So as you bring your mouse pointer over it and you click the header highlights and the rest of the waveform reduces by the size of the header. Now, some people haven't liked that for one reason or the other, so you can turn that off. Then when you click it, the only thing that happens is the header highlights, but the waveform doesn't change size. Now, the disadvantage of that is that if you have your waveform height really large like this, then it can be obscured by the header. So now if it's not selected, you could see that full waveform. As you click it, you don't get quite that animation in the sense that you did something when you selected the clip. Going back over here and then turn this on. On is the default for this. You'll see that it reduces that height so it doesn't obscure the top of the waveform. You also get a better sense that you selected a clip. So that's what that's all about. Now link clip color to track color means the clips will inherit the track color. So right now I changed that and now suddenly these clips are all green and so they're picking up the track color. So if I click the track header, change the color of the track, all the clips will match. It's nice if you have a convention for certain kinds of instruments. You could set the track color and then link that. I operate with that turned off recently because it's so easy to change the clip color. I commonly come in here and adjust these clip colors to have different meanings even within one track. It's really nice in this version where you can right click and quickly set those. You could do the same thing for the track color as well. Right click and set the track color here. Then back over here, if you link those two things together, you can just right click here, set the track and the clip colors together. Tracks automatically assign colors to new tracks. If that's off, they'll just pick up the default color, but with that on, they will rotate through additional colors as you add tracks. So I'll go down here at the bottom, add a track, and you'll see this track is red, add another track, and it's moved up to orange, add a track, it's moved up to yellow. So it adds them kind of skipping every other color on there as you add new tracks. If you don't want it to do that, then you could just turn that off. Then as you add tracks, they have a blank color selection. So they're assigned to no color. Now, the colored backgrounds on tracks, you can either show that this adds a little bit of shading of the track color on the background of tracks. So you can see it right here, especially on these new tracks that I added. There's a very slight shading that is added to those tracks, so you can get the idea that they're in those colors. If you turn that shading off, then you'll see they just have the standard background color. In a way, I like that better. I guess visually I like that better. For keeping track and knowing which track you're on, there is some advantage to allowing it to do that shading that way. Double click on the header to switch between small and medium, small and large, small, medium, and large. So you can see that small and medium is the default. That's my preferred way of doing it. However, if you choose small, medium, and large, it will alternate through different values like this. Double click, double click, double click. And this is, for the most part, these days, this is for audio clips. If you do this on MIDI clips, you wind up opening the editor rather than doing that resizing. Like this, that opens the MIDI editor rather than resizing the track. Double click to switch the height between small and medium, which is the default. It'll do this, just this size or this size. Show track outputs. If I leave that on, then at the far right of the inline mixer area, you've got this little speaker. This little speaker allows you to assign the output routing for that track. And you can assign it to your different hardware destinations, or you can assign it back into other tracks. Even within buses, you can route the output back in, which is one of the really cool things about Tracktion. You've got flexible, but actually really easy to set up routing. Now, if you don't have that turned on, you can still do that by clicking underneath the plugins area on a track. You'll get that same menu. However, if the track is narrow, because you have a lot of tracks in your project, you'll see that's no longer accessible. So this will disappear as you narrow the track. But if you still want access to it, you can keep it visible, this track output assignment, using this setting, show track outputs. So you can leave that on or off. Most of the time, unless I'm working on routings, I would say I can leave that off. MIDI note color. So let's take a look at highlight current key in the MIDI background. This is commonly misunderstood because this feature is not directly related. It's similar, but it's not directly related to these colors. So it operates independently of the colors. So I'm going to find another example here. All right, so I'm going to open the MIDI editor. What we're looking at here is the shading of the background. So what's in the scale of the key, and you can see up here in the tempo track, my key is set to C. So all of these notes are superimposed over a series of essentially piano rolls. So the light shaded notes correspond to the white keys. The dark shaded notes correspond to the black keys. So if you're going to enter MIDI notes, then if you put them on the light shaded notes, then you'll be within the key. So what I'm going to do is go out, let's see here at bar 5. I'm going to insert a key change right here. So right now I've got key of C at bar 5. I'm going to change that to E flat. You can see how now the light shading, essentially the white notes have shifted. So now in that key, I can, basically I could duplicate all these notes. And if my notes fall on the light shading, it will be in that key. But I'm going to turn this off. So if I turn this off and then go back and look at this, you'll see that the background doesn't shift based on the key. And while that's cool, it's not nearly as cool as having the note colors change. So if you're on the Pro version, you have these two, which means it will actually change the note colors based on which chord you have in the chord track. There is another video on that where I go over that in quite a bit of detail, so you probably want to look at that. If you're on the free version, you won't have these two options, but you still have the in-key scale note and the out-of-key scale note. These were recently renamed to be more clear. They had slightly different names, which you'll notice if you watch the other video, but they do the same thing. So the in-key scale note will be blue, and the out-of-key scale note will be red. Now we were already over here looking at this, but why don't we see blue or red notes? Well, that's because you have to choose the note color using this multicolor option. So I'm going to select one of the notes, do Command A, which would be Control A on a PC. If I right-click any note, then the note color appears up here. I choose the multicolor scale notes. You could do the same thing from the MIDI editor toolbar, and you can see that now these are all in key, but this one note is not. So if I drag this note, then I've got all these notes in key. So I'm going to change this one to maybe A sharp just to be different. So now as I drag my notes around, I can build chords, choose these notes, I can divide the notes, and basically use this as a composition tool. And you can see because these are not in the same key after here, after this bar 5 where I changed from A sharp to E flat, this note is now out of scale, so I can adjust these to where I've got my notes in the scale or not. So it's a really nice and fun composition tool. It's amazing to have this available on the free version for the scales, and it takes it to a whole nother level when you can use this against the chord track, and we've covered that in previous videos. So thanks for watching this video on the Appearance tab. I'll see you in another video very soon.